Private Lender Podcast, episode 134.
The Private Lender Podcast quote of the day comes to us from Walt Whitman, who said, "The most affluent man is he that confronts all the shows he sees by equivalence out of the stronger wealth of himself."
This is the Private Lender Podcast, the show that shares practical advice and know-how for new and seasoned lenders, from private mortgages on single-family houses to joint ventures on commercial projects and beyond. Discover details about investment vehicles that you won't find at your local bank or online broker. Listen and learn from private lenders and real estate investors, as well as from professionals and entrepreneurs, as they share the details, strategies, and the insight that allows for successful and prosperous lending. Now, get ready to increase your ROI. Here's your host, Keith Baker.
Hello, Private Lender Nation. Greetings and welcome to episode 134 of the Private Lender Podcast. I'm your host, Keith Baker, and I'd like to thank you for sharing your time and your ears with me today. If you're looking for practical tips and advice on how to put the power of the banking system into your investment accounts, then you are in the right place. But if you want to learn from my mistakes so that you can both avoid and profit from them, well, then pull up a chair and pour yourself a drink, my friend, because this podcast is just for you. Because I'm dedicated to giving people just like you and me the knowledge and confidence for successful and profitable private lending. If you're looking to join a community of private lenders, then head over to the Private Lender Podcast Facebook group to connect with other private lenders and to share experiences, stories, and opinions. Just go to the show notes page for the link or simply search Private Lender Podcast in Facebook groups. And while you're at it, head on over to the privatelenderacademy.com. Actually, it's not it's privatelenderacademy.com to learn more about the forthcoming course on private lending and click on Apply Now to register for pre-launch discounts and other goodies. And look, guys, I was a little skeptical when I first learned about today's guest. I wasn't sure he would be a good fit for the show at first blush. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time digging too deep, but after speaking with him for like a minute, I knew he had to be on the show, and so we booked it, and I'm happy to share Jonathan DeYoe with you today and hopefully introduce you to him. And as I've shared in previous episodes, I myself am on a bit of a mindfulness journey. I like to sign off wishing you mindfulness from every episode, and just given that life has happened to me myself in the last few years, divorce, etc. I'm really happy that someone has applied the mindfulness approach to money. And as I look back, I really wish I would have done this. Well, I wish I would have applied mindfulness years ago, but especially to money, because I think, at least in my case, with the relationship with my ex, money wasn't a huge issue, but it was large enough. And I think had we both been mindful about it, maybe things would have been different, at least on the money front. I'm not saying I'd still be married, but I really do believe that on the money front, at least the awareness and the understanding would have been a lot better. And I believe such an approach can eliminate a lot of the money pains and ill feelings that couples have. So let's go ahead and get down to the brass tacks of today's episode and get straight to the interview with Jonathan DeYoe. Lender Nation, I'm throwing a curveball to you today because we're not going to talk about private lending at all, but we will be talking about money. But today's guest has a very interesting approach to money, one that I think I certainly want to use this platform to get out into the world and more people to learn, and that is mindfulness. And I'm very early on in my practice. I just started. Fortunately, mindfulness was not court-ordered for me, so I'm doing this on my own, little by little. Jonathan DeYoe, welcome to the Private Lender Podcast.
I'm excited to be here, Keith. And if the podcast is anything like our opening conversation, this is going to be a lot of fun.
I couldn't agree more. And I just, full disclosure and transparency, and when I was doing my prep for this interview, I quickly stopped prepping anything. I have no agenda. Jonathan has nothing but good reviews on Yelp and whatnot. And he is in the Berkeley, San Francisco Bay Area. If you want to get in touch with him, we'll get to more of that later. But yeah, this whole mindfulness thing. I don't have the words. You do. This is what you do on the daily. So please, let's just start with your practice, your financial planning and financial advising, I should say, and how you bring that mindfulness element to, like we were saying earlier, like the complete lack of financial literacy that is taught, or the vacuum that is teaching financial literacy in the United States. So, Jonathan, the floor is yours.
I think maybe a little background makes a lot of sense. So in just a really brief nutshell, I'm a seminarian. So I came to California to study at the Lutheran Seminary, turned academic, Buddhist academic, turned financial advisor. So really the concept of mindful money comes after a long journey of like self-discovery and comparative religion and philosophy and psychology and trying to figure out how people work and decisions we make. And it turns out that after 20 years, actually, let's see here, I started in 1996, wrote the book in 2007. So yeah, that's 10 years. After 10, 11 years in the business, I had this semi-epiphany that it's the decisions we make that create our problems or our successes. And the question is, how are you making your decisions? And if you have a space between, oh my God, or yay, and decision, where you can think, you can make a better decision. So that's where mindfulness comes in, is creating that space between the stimulus that the world gives us and our response. And mindfulness turns out, it has been studied for thousands and thousands of years, practiced for thousands of years, specifically to resolve this issue of our overreactivity to the stuff that's coming at us from outside of us. And turns out in finance, there's a lot of that. Putting those two things together becomes very exciting and became something that I was like, okay, I figured out, this is my mission. This is what I want to share with the world.
The external stimuli, and before we got on, I sat on my stairs for just a few minutes and just started, didn't really meditate, but just started noticing my breath, right? Trying to bring it in and try to give that some of that space, because I am let's face it, when it came time to, ADD was going around all the rage in the late 70s and early 80s. And my father was convinced I didn't need any medicine. I just needed a good ass whooping, right? That's all, So I was, I missed out on that boat, so to speak. I think had I gone down that route, my life would have been a little different in terms of disidentifying with, to your point, like the news media, the Instagram hits, all the stimuli that are coming in, and to your point, molding decisions. I just sat there and just try to find that space, and not try to attach to any thought, and which is hard, and that's why I'm like, basically to me this interview is like a guided meditation for me. So just no pressure, but I like how you talk about that space and where this is all coming from. So a seminarian, awesome. And, it's funny, Friedrich Nietzsche was also studying to be a Lutheran minister before he went to the University of Bonn. But anyway, philosophy major. That's a different episode. So you had a journey, right? Personal journey, very personal journey, I would say. And you got to this point, been doing it for 20, 25, 26 years now. So how, obviously you have got to be the one lone voice in the darkness, talking about mindful money. So how do you convince people? How did you lead them? How did you lead that horse to water?
That is such an interesting question, because I almost didn't want to name the firm Mindful Money. So the firm was DeYoe Wealth Management. In 2001, when I started my own firm, I named it DeYoe Wealth Management, and it was DeYoe Wealth Management until 2019. So just recently, a couple of years ago, we changed the name. My book was published in 2017, and that's when I sort of put it all together, mindfulness with money and why that's important, and how to use those two things together. But just to your point, I was the only person talking about it. And I thought that if I brought it out there, my peer group would say, that's soft, that's silly, that's, how can you say that? You're full of shit, that kind of stuff. And I would feel small. And I have, you're catching me on a very weird day, because yesterday I discovered how much I'm afraid of not being believed in. Like I need people to trust me and to believe in me. And if I don't have that, I don't value myself as much. So that's just a deeply personal thing. I'm coming to, realize some things about myself after years and years and years of like working too hard and trying too hard and all kinds of stuff. So the fear of not being accepted in my industry for this philosophy or this belief system drove me to like turn away from it for years and years and years and years. And finally I said to my team, I said, you know what, this is what I want to do. And I just sort of, girded myself for the barbs. And they were like, hey, that's what you believe. That makes a ton of sense. And they were like, hey, let's do this thing. And so now we're all together. We're doing this thing in the world. It's just really pretty cool. And we're not entirely alone. There are 3 or 4 books that are entitled Mindful Money. And 24 years ago, somebody won a Nobel Prize for behavioral finance. Daniel Kahneman, he's actually out with a new book. I recommend this book. It's Noise. He used to talk about how we have all these biases, and our biases are problematic, right? And in my opinion, the benefit of mindfulness is it enables you to sort of get over some of the biases. If you're aware of the biases and you're aware of your experience of the current environment, you can kind of go, wait a second, I'm having an emotional response I don't need to have, right? And so you can get over some bias. His new book is like, it's all about noise. And in our social media world, there is so much noise. There's so much overwhelm. Our amygdala doesn't know how to deal with it. Like there's lions coming out of the bushes every step of it. And we just don't know what to do with this. And our bodies and our minds are not designed for this kind of a continuous, constant threat and stress. And so we just react. So mindfulness becomes more and more and more important. And because there's academics saying that, hey, the benefit of an advisor isn't stock selection, it's not investment selection, it's not market timing, it's planning, education, and behavioral support. Help you do the right thing at the right time, not do the wrong thing at any specific time, not react. Act based on a plan. Stop reacting based on markets or something somebody said on a peer said around the water cooler, whatever. We act based on a plan. We don't react to what the world is doing to us.
The best illustration I have in my head for that is a little over a year ago, we ran out of toilet paper for a nasal, a virus for the respiratory system. Okay. Not Kleenex, right? Not for sneezing and coughing. No. We ran out of toilet paper. And I think it just so aptly illustrates where we look. I was at the grocery store and there was a run on toilet paper. Oh my God, herd mentality. I was right there. I'm one of the bad people. I admit it, but to your point now, I've instituted a PAR system, so I don't have to worry about that. A PAR system in the sense of, I used to work at a bar. And so each bottle of liquor or each beer had a PAR. You always had to have 10 bottles at any one time, right? Or, the high end scotch, you just had one, but the cheap well vodka, you had 20. So I do the same thing with, and of course, being here in the Gulf Coast, we're used to hurricanes and being without things for a while. So I just keep updating my hurricane list. And I don't do it just from June through November. It's a year-round, thing. To your point, to when Hurricane Harvey hit, my wife at the time was like, "How can you be so calm?" My day job, I'm an insurance adjuster, so I deal with risk and bad things all the time. And I told her, I said, "Look, this is an act of God. We've prepared as much as we can, and we're fully insured. I confirmed all premiums had been paid, insurance premiums had been paid. Flood, windstorm, we're good. We've done everything that we can." And then she really got mad at me when I threw a party to watch the pay-per-view fight right in the middle of Harvey, because I was so calm. I didn't have to react, right? I was prepared. So, it's a long way of trying to really confirm what you say, and it resonates and hits home.
So this is a story that my dad told me this story. He was, this is Cold War era. He's in the Navy. He's on a plane. And there was this guy on the plane that was so calm, was always calm, and he was very analytical. And if there was ever an issue, turbulence or something was happening, my dad would look at the guy and he would say, "Is he calm? Oh, we're all good." If he was calm, we're steady, we're good, right? And there was this period where they were going to land in Iceland, but an engine blew, right? And so they were like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen? Are we going to be able to make it back? Are we going to go into the ocean? Not sure what's going to happen." They were doing reconnaissance. They were looking for submarines from the air. And so the engine blows, they're trying to get back to Iceland, and he's looking at the guy. The guy's like, "Yeah, we got this. We're fine." He's calculating, he's figuring it out. The other engine blows. And they're like, "Oh my God, we have to start ditching stuff into the ocean. We have to start pushing stuff out the door so we have enough." It's not buoyancy. It's whatever. Lift. Yeah, enough lift. You got to stay above so we can get to the coast and land this thing. And he keeps looking at the guy. The guy's totally calm. They push some things out the door. Guy's totally calm. He goes, "No, we get it." He's like, "We have to lose another 300 pounds. If we can lose 300 pounds, we're going to make it all the way." No engines. They're literally just, soaring. Yeah, exactly. Totally gliding. And he keeps looking at the guy. And the reality is that the point of the whole story is we need the guy. In the Hurricane Harvey, you were the guy, but we need to have somebody to look at that is calm, that is, collected, that is, because if we don't have that, we all lose our shit. We lose our minds if we don't have somebody that's like, "Okay, wait. Back up a second. This is normal. Like you said, it's an act of God. These things happen. We prepare the best we can and we go forward. Be the guy. That's awesome.
Welcome to Houston. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, we despite popular opinion, we do have good weather for about 2 weeks a year, and it's not humid. It's very pleasant. We get a lot of snowbirders coming down for the winter and whatnot. But snowbirds, I should say. But yeah, no, I agree, because it is so easy to, especially when it comes to money. So I mean, I don't want to throw my parents under the bus, but I little peek inside of things. Sunday morning, I went to my mom's house. My dad passed. It'll be a year in July. So we're going through the stuff, I'm making sure, mom's all right. My sister lives close to her. My nephew's with her. So, that's all good. But we're going through, my dad had a master's in chemistry, and I was like, hey, there's this thesis. I'd like to keep that, that's a trinket that, I'm cool with that. I'll dust it every week. And then we got to this, my mom just started laughing, and she's like, here's this, like from 1967, it was a certificate of completion from a financial education class. And my mom was like, we just started laughing like it. My dad was not the best with money, but we started laughing about how funny it was that he took an, finance education class, literacy class. And I started thinking, I was like, you know what? He didn't die in debt. When he was in the black, he wasn't in the red, and I started thinking about that. I was just kind of laughing about, you don't have to be good. You just got to be consistent. Right. And you can go, but having that background of money, being sort of that middle class, aspiring to, say, would you rather be rich? You want to be rich and famous? No, I just want to be rich. I don't want to be famous. I don't want people to know I'm rich, right? Yeah, but yeah, right. So anyway, but when it comes to, being mindful with money, budgeting, I can definitely see where if you can just give yourself a little bit of space and get quiet, your budgeting, your allocation to retirement and vacation fund and all that, I would imagine, like, once people get into that, your job is pretty easy at that point. Like, once they get honed in.
The most difficult thing we have is, and we do this with all of our clients, is we walk through a planning process. And in the planning process, we remove the crazy. Like, we remove the kind of investment that would act, for example, like a Bitcoin. We remove the kind of investment that would act like, a GameStop or an options trader, or we remove the expectation of the upside, we remove the expectation of that kind of downside. We look at averages, we look at long-term, we look at cash flows, we look at spending, we look at making decisions based on things that give us higher probability outcomes. And by removing the crazy, we sort of create ground rules for how people work with money. And then whenever stress occurs, like what did the plan tell me I was supposed to do? Oh, I'm supposed to save this much every month, supposed to invest it this way every month, supposed to rebalance on a regular basis. Keep it simple. You keep it simple, you end up getting the things that you want out of life. If you get sucked into the crazy, which there's plenty of crazy to get sucked into, if you get sucked into the crazy, you lose out on the higher probabilities that you're hoping for. You lose out on the probability of the kids going to school without debt, the retirement income you can't outlive, the legacy you want to live behind. By going into the crazy, you lose out on the things that, the higher probability path to get where you want to go. So we talk about the plan, and we talked about this earlier in meditation. You sit down and you focus on your breath. You sat on the staircase before we got on the call here. You sat on the staircase and you focus on your breath, right? You in, out, and that focuses and sort of desensitizes you to everything that's going on around you, right? In finance, in personal finance, your plan is your breath. It is the thing you focus on when all the world is going crazy. You go, okay, what were those 4 simple things I'm supposed to do? That's the benefit of planning. So once you have a plan in place and you have a portfolio that basically reflects the plan, we're not portfolio wizards. We admit it. No one's a portfolio wizard. Everyone is either lucky or unlucky. We are allocated. We are diversified.
Thank you for admitting that, for being the first in the industry.
Right. No, and there are no wizards, right? There's no wizards. No one can predict the future. No one can guess what's going to happen next. But there is still a way to build a portfolio. There's still a way to strategize on finance. And so we use those ways, and then we're patient and we're disciplined. And the plan enables that. And when somebody says, hey, what about this thing? I say, hey, let's go look at the plan and see what the plan says about that. And keep it simple. And that's how we get from where we are to where we want to go.
I love it because I agree that every plan. My dad told me a story a long time ago about, and he showed me a video on how Post-it notes were created at 3M. And that there was the research scientist had, I forget what percentage, 3 or 5% or whatever their annual budget was supposed to be dedicated for whatever they want. Like no project that's coming down the pipeline, and this guy wanted, something to mark pages in his hymnal when he's singing in the church choir, right? Simple things like that. But I always think you should always have that gamble money, like a small percentage. Like, so when Bitcoin does come along, right? And it's like, oh my God, we got the fear of missing out, which by the way, only puts you into a state of lack and wanting and is not great. But if you still want to scratch that itch, I'm a firm believer in fine. Take that 0.5%, 1% or whatever you've allocated into your point in your plan and know that you're going to lose it anyway, right? That's like going to Vegas. Right? I'm going to take $1,000 to Vegas. I piss it away. I'm coming home. Right. Or yep. I have, but to me, that mentality, I think it's a healthy part of what we call asset allocation, right? Is just having,
we have a couple clients who back when you may remember this, when Steve Jobs was accepting an investment from Microsoft, right? This was, I don't know if it was late 90s or early 2000s, but this is, so Apple's on the ropes. Apple is dying. They are not going to survive. They need capital. And we had a couple clients that said, you know what, it looks like Microsoft's going to make this investment. Apple's got great products. If you're an Apple user, you are an Apple user. You've got the phone, the watch, the computer, the iPad, the laptop. You've got the accessories, and every year they give you a new dongle to attach things together. So it's like, if you're an Apple user, you've got a ton of Apple products, and there's lots of Apple users, and they are, and I'm one of them. So I can sort of speak, not speaking out of school. I'm very loyal. I have, when I think about a new computer, I don't think about a PC. I think about an Apple. Anyway, so this guy he's like, you know what, this is my fun money. But he's owned those shares through all the splits in over a 20-year period. It's his biggest asset, right? And that's the one he talks about. And that's the one he's like excited about. And that's the one that's the biggest one for him. And it's his biggest holding. And he was right. The funny thing is, on the path, there were 4 or 5 others that went to zero, right? He has 1 out of 5 massive winners. Good for him. Good for him. That's awesome. We all have some winner that we've done really well with. Some folks, it's a real estate purchase. Some folks, it's a stock. Some folks, it's, an oil well. You're in Houston, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. But yeah.
Working on it. Yeah. If you allocate just a little piece of capital to the big chance, 1%, 2% maybe, fantastic. But then if you blow through that 2%, don't take from the serious money to refill the 2% money, right? Don't steal from Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, you got to be disciplined there. Like I said, once it's gone, like that's that Vegas money. Once it's gone,
yep, it's gone.
In a former life, I used to hand my wallet to my friends before we walked into a casino because what they got to see what they referred to as the monster would come out.
Yeah,
chasing losses, just making very bad, reacting to poorly made decisions, I should say. But that's the fun of gambling, right? But to your point, be disciplined. Don't sell your Microsoft or your Apple stock, to go fund that addiction, that gambling side of it. I like that a lot. So okay, sorry. So you're going through the planning. You take us through. We get a plan, and I like because that's sort of the touchstone, right? Sort of like I have core values and pillars of private lenders. So when there's a question, right? You go back to that touchstone to figure out, okay, no noise, no BS, principles and methods. Methods are many, principles are few.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Methods change, but the principles never do, right? So that's you go back to that, right? So my core value number 1 is the return of investment, right? So if I'm loaning $100, I want my $100 back. That's the first thing, right? Then we'll talk about my 10% or whatever I get from interest on it or points, but get it back. Then get the return on the investment, but it's also it's never trust, always verify, and you got it. Like I've lost money being a private lender to a friend in the second position, and I was angry as hell. But the thing that helped me the most was I was the last one. The buck stopped with me, right? It was my decision to pull the trigger and make that loan, right? So I can get mad at my friend all I want for cheating me out of some money. I let it happen. I allowed it to happen.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so I know that's a lot of people, that's considered radical acceptance, but it helped.
Well, the first rule of investing is manage risk. The second rule of investing is to, review rule number 1. You have to manage the risk.
I like that. Manage the risk, review rule number 1. I like that.
Yep.
All right. That's going in the show notes for sure. But yeah, taking responsibility, but having that plan, knowing. So for example, like right now, it's in the real estate world, it's almost obscene what the markets are doing, right? I mean, I understand California may be a little different with the flight, but I'm sitting there thinking, if enough people leave California, hell, if the prices are good, Pismo Beach, here I come, man. But anyway, but the real estate markets are crazy, and they're crazy in Florida, they're crazy. Manhattan took a big hit, right? Everyone, it's nuts, and I see people chasing risk now. Like they want to go get 70% of ARV from a hard money lender, and then another 15% from me, and I'm like, hell no. Like what planet does that make any sense? That doesn't protect my money. That doesn't help me get my return of my investment back, right? So it's, everyone wants private money, and it's funny. I went to a networking event recently. Everyone just got their real estate license, their agent license, right? I'm like, okay, not to be rude, but like, oh, you still got your full-time corporate job. You're still doing the corporate finance thing. You know what I mean? It's like, once you quit, then I know you're all in, right? I never quit because my whole demographic is people who work in corporate America and want to invest in real estate and want to do it safely, right? So I'm a consultant now, but and I'm trying to get away from it, but I still do my daily, get my 1099, get my once a month I get a wire and the accountant, pay everything. But no, it's crazy now. The real estate is just nuts. Stocks. I mean, a little over a year ago, a friend of mine just texted me. He goes, I just went all in with 80 grand in margin.
Jesus.
And I said, okay.
Good luck.
I go, who did you not use the margin on? And I'll piggyback on.
Good luck. Oh my God.
He paid back his margin by July of last year. Got above board. And I mean, look, there was nothing. I have 0 finance classes, right? Like none whatsoever. But I knew intrinsically there was nothing wrong with the American economy when COVID hit, right? It was panic. It was fear, right? And I wish I wish I was Mark Haynes and say, hey, I'm calling the bottom, on CNBC, but I didn't. But it just seemed like, okay, I had a whole bunch of money I was about to put into real estate loans. I'm like, what the heck? Put it all in the FANGs, some of the other ones that popped, and then, everybody was a genius. Everyone's a genius when the tide rises, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
Anyway, I'm rambling on. Crazy markets. Do you also help invest or consult with real estate investments or other investments? Like if I came to you with say Bitcoin, would you touch it, or say no? It's not an investment. It's a gamble.
As a financial planner, so as an investor, I don't personally invest in. I mean, I've invested in everything. I've invested in so many things. It's I've done oil wells, I've done real estate, I've done lending, I've done lots and lots and lots and lots of different stuff. My favorite 2 things are global equities, and then on the side, just because I love business people and love people to take risks, I do a little bit of angel investing as well. But my personal portfolio, the way I invest, is basically equities broadly diversified. That being said, in planning includes everything. Planning, I look at real estate cash flows for people that have huge real estate portfolios. I look at personal businesses, one person shops and their inflow and outflow, and I help them figure out the marketing strategy and help them figure out cash flow analysis and all that kind of stuff. Bitcoin is an interesting question because it's not an investment, really. It's a currency, right? It's a speculative potential investment. It could go to $1 million. It could go to 0. I can make a case both ways. So I'm not actually advising clients to buy it or sell it. I'm just saying, hey, if you're going to do it, there's some ways to do it. You want to, again, manage risk, manage expectation. And I've had a couple in the last 6 months. Obviously, there's been a lot of attention paid to it. There have been a lot of courses, a lot of classes, a lot of online stuff from people in the industry talking about it. I'm still not. After it hit 19,000 in what was that, 2019, the first time it really jumped up, I said, I said to myself, if it drops back to 3,500, I'm a buyer. Remember, it dropped back to 4,000. It didn't get to 3,500. It dropped to 4,000. So I wasn't in for that huge, run up to 50 grand. I missed it by $500, but that's okay. That's my discipline. Like, I have a buy price that I think kind of makes sense. And, there's always another thing. Like, before Bitcoin was huge, what was huge? Remember, oil went to $100 a barrel, right? And so Exxon and Chevron, and before that, it was a whole bunch of .com things that were, crazy silly on the upside. And before that, I can't even remember. There's other things before that. Actually, real estate in the mid 90s, real estate in 07, 08. There's always something that everyone is really excited about. The key, the discipline, the mindfulness is to just recognize that, hey, just because a whole bunch of people are talking about it and that's exciting, doesn't mean it's a great investment. Stay diversified, stay asset allocated, have a percent in crazy, always, be open to a little bit of crazy, but realize the bulk of your long-term lifetime returns isn't going to come from one great trade. It's going to come from consistent, plan appropriate asset allocation, diversification, and then rebalancing. That's how you manage wealth. That's how you manage long-term intergenerational wealth.
Boom. There, you just touched on it right there. And not to sound like my father, but in this era of instant gratification, and it's hard, like I remember, like I got, my kids are 11 and 14, and they do pretty well with money for the most part. I'm working on a few things I'm not going to leave my kids money, right? Well, have you ever seen the movie Brewster's Millions with Richard Pryor?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah. So we're pretty much.
Well, we're the same generation.
Yeah, exactly. As I say, Atari, Nintendo. But Richard Pryor finds out he had that rich uncle that he didn't know about, and he's got to spend $30 million and can't keep any of it or invest it. He's got to spend it, and then if he can spend $30 million, then he inherits $300 million. Right? So I am definitely tying incentives to my whatever I leave behind for my children. Because
hope they're better incentives. Spend this much, you'll get a whole bunch more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know. I'm not saying I'm going to put that incentive. God, I hope I got 30 million. But in that vein, so like for example, and I'm planning on doing a trust to have all this set up. So like you said, before my kids even get married or partner up, like this is all laid out. But if they make a decision, like what, instead of paying for a big wedding, let's do something small and put the down payment on our starter home. Right? Boom. That's a point to the positive, right? Show some delayed gratification and upscale or moving up. Now, school districts aside, these things, but just show that you're deliberate and mindful about your money.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I want to put those steps in place so that when I'm gone, if they don't get the money, it's on them. They got to look at themselves and say, how could I didn't follow these simple instructions from dad? Because I've seen in my family, we call them, windfall events. I inherited $26,000 from my uncle passed away, and I promptly went to Europe, right? Greatest education I could have ever bought myself. I don't regret going. I could have put a little more back, started that nest egg a little bigger. So my allocation was flawed, but I don't regret that. But, but I've seen look, I had the money, it's here. Oh, I got to pay tuition. Oh, I can stay another semester in college. All of a sudden I have this money. And then one day I broke my CD player. And okay, kids, a CD player is a little disc that played music back in the days, but, and I go and there's no more money, Yeah. And so I learned that from my inheritance from my uncle that, here I am thinking that I'm wise and above, all of this. No, I bought toilet paper too last year when everyone was freaking out, so having that plan, I like that. And anyway, so that's my plan with the future.
Some of the things you're mentioning are, it's interesting because I had to go through this lesson of learning how to trade as well, or how not to trade as well. And today there's a whole industry that's built up. There's Robinhood, the trading app. There are, the instant gratification finance crew is huge. And if you're trading on those kinds of apps, you're the product. And if you don't realize that you're the product, then you're going to get stung by this system. The interesting thing is they're learning how to trade. They're learning how to invest, and every loss is a lesson. Everything that every lesson that somebody, if they buy GameStop, when it hits the 400 mark and it goes to 200, that's a fantastic lesson. If they did it on a margin, it's probably an even better lesson. It hurts more. That's where we learn. That's where we have the best lessons. So when I started in this industry, I bought my first stock literally when I was 9 years old. And so that traded a couple stocks in my, when I was a middle school, high school. Never made a lot of money, never did anything, great with it, but I was really interested in the markets and things. When I started in the industry, I was like, you know what? I'm smarter than your average bear. I'm going to trade options. I had, massive positions in options in the late 90s, .com boom. Thought I was a genius, lost my ass on many occasions, made some, lost some, it was really exciting. I didn't build any wealth though. I didn't have a diversified portfolio that was also on the side that was just kind of growing, or I had a couple pieces of real estate. Those were nice. Those helped me out. But every generation learns their lessons. Every generation learns how to invest. So my question was interesting. I think you learned a lesson, right? You took the 26,000 and now I'm doing the same thing. Like I made the mistakes and I'm trying to teach my kids the mistakes rather than let them make mistakes. I'm trying to say, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. But they don't learn that way. They got to actually get the 26,000 inheritance, blow it, and then not have money for tuition. That's how you learn a lesson, right? We're all going to learn these lessons. We all learn them eventually. Let them learn.
All I can say is thank God for the Pell Grant, because that came in real handy when I ran out of money, and I'd already been cut off by my parents at that point. I like to bend a quote from Better Off Dead. It took me 8 years to get my bachelor's degree. I'm no dummy. All right, I'm very well educated. I've got over 200 hours. Unfortunately, I only have a B. I should have a PhD and a master's with that, but I don't. But anyhow, that's another story for another day. Quick question. 9 years old, your first stock, bought it. What was it?
It was First Bank System. And this was in 1980. This is before the S&L crisis. So I bought a bank before or in the middle of the first S&L crisis. I lost every penny of that one.
Oh, it's funny. I was doing an interview recently. We talked about the S&L crisis. I brought up the S&L crisis. Savings and loan was ugly in the 80s, man. That just horrible. So you bought your first stock because I'm sure everyone's like, hey, buy a financial, right? Bank stocks are all the rage.
What's
right?
the risk?
Yeah,
what could go wrong?
What could go wrong? That's funny. And so you traded early on. That is not your average kid, man. Trading baseball cards, maybe stocks.
I never did. I actually never got into baseball cards. I never got into those statistics kind of things. So the part of the story that we left off in the beginning is I was raised with. I'm actually in the middle of pestering my parents to get their Social Security statements. To know what the income was like. So I don't really know what we made because I was a kid, right? But when I was about 14 or 15, my dad showed me our tax returns one year. And we made like $8,000 in a year, and we lived a family of four on $8,000. And this is 1985, right? So, $8,000 is not enough for a family of four. It is, I would guess, below poverty line at that point. I don't really know. And I'm trying to figure that out. But the reason I'm saying all this is I was deeply interested in security and becoming financially successful because I had no concept of what that meant. I had no experience with it. My dad had a business that had a bunch of partners that went under when I was about 3 years old. He ran a bunch of different things that didn't really work out. And when I was 15, he had his first real income. In the meantime, after I got out of preschool, my mom after I was out of preschool, she started a preschool. And that kind of kept us in food for a number of years, but I didn't have anything growing up, and I got to see my friends, take ski trips and do things. And if I wanted to go to that soccer tournament, I had to make money to go to that soccer tournament. I had to figure out a way to make it happen. If I wanted to, anything I wanted to do, if I wanted the Atari, I never had a Nintendo, but if I wanted a new Atari game, I had to find money to do that. So I worked, full-time summers when I was 12. I worked full-time school year when I was 14. And I've worked ever since. It's always been in order to have, I had to create and build and work and save and invest. So I was very, very interested in stock market as a tool for building wealth when I was very young. And then I took that detour because finance was so boring by the time I got to college. I took that detour into philosophy and religious studies and became a seminarian and did all that. But it's like I wanted so badly because I didn't have. And it's interesting because now I have. My kids want for nothing, and I think I'm breaking them. I think I'm hurting them by giving them too much now. And I think if I look backwards 50 years from now, I'll know a lot more. If I have a fear, that's my big fear. My fear is I've given them too much.
How do you look at one generation and say, how dare you give us better than what you had, right? That's what we do, right? Yep. So to your point, I mean, a very similar background, I remember sitting in line to get gas in the 70s with my mom, and we had, I can't remember the model, but it was a huge Cadillac with the 512. It was my grandfather's, and when he passed, my dad got it, and it was so long ago that my dad cut 2x4s and made and plywood and made the flat seat flat and upholstered it and just put me and my sister in the back. No seatbelts.
Of course not.
No seatbelts. No. And we drive from Houston up to Oklahoma. Anyway, but I do also remember the early 80s when, I get up, I leave for school, Dad's on the couch. I come home from school, Dad was on the couch. There was oil, the bottom fell out of oil. And my dad had to take a job as a headhunter. He was trying to get other people jobs just to, have some income until, because he was an oil field chemist until that came back around. That's, that part of the upstream cycled around. And so our vacations were, we go to grandma's house, or, every now and again we would go to say SeaWorld in San Antonio, or we do a weekend thing, but my friends would go for 2 weeks, the typical 2 week. Now maybe they go back home to Ohio to see grandma and grandpa, but it was kind of the same way. And I knew, my dad gave me a good work ethic because I'd say, hey, Dad, there's a baseball card show coming up. And let me see if I can, 1987 Fleer. No, yeah, it was a Fleer. I bought the 1987. I was in baseball cards for 1 year. And my dad was like, oh, you want some money to go to the card show? Yeah, I was like, yeah, Pete, I can get a Pete Rose autograph, whatever. My dad's like, he gambled on baseball. Anyway, but he was like, well, go earn the money. So once a week, he would wake me up before sun up. We'd put the lawnmower, the weed eater, and the extension cord in the trunk of his car, and he'd drive about a mile down the road. And this lady in a Sunday school class, she was a single mom, and I made $5 for cutting her grass. And I'd have to push everything back. And, and then I'd see my friends going to swim practice or whatever, and there I am on the street, embarrassed. And, before my dad passed, I thanked him. I was like, thank you for being a hard ass. I hated you. I cursed your name all the way down Greenway Drive. It was a mile long, I said, but because of that, my kids aren't going to see me sitting on the couch worrying about where I'm going to, I'll diversify, right? If I'll be an insurance adjuster, I'll paint houses if I have to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Oddly enough, both my mom's parents and my dad's grandparents both owned grocery stores. So the entrepreneur is there in the family, right? The business owner is there. But my parents being born in the Depression, the late 30s, education was everything. Come hell or high water, you get educated, go make money, right? So out of that, then they put us up in the suburbs of Houston, and to your point where, I think I'm a detriment to my kids because everything is at the fingertips, it's all right here. And my kids haven't had to lift a finger for shit. I'm sorry. They haven't had to do a thing. I know we're not a rabbit hole in this hardcore.
No, we can bring it back though. I have a photo of my son at 10 years old. I worry that I give him too much, but then I remember he's 10 years old and he's doing his own laundry. So he does work, he does do stuff, and he's 16 and he's had a job for a year and a half, and he works at a local deli. My daughter, who's 13, before he worked at the deli, he opened and closed the neighborhood pool. He'd get up in the morning, go over before school, sweep the deck, empty the garbage, open the umbrellas and uncover the pool. At night, he'd go over, sweep the deck, empty the garbage, cover the pool, close the umbrellas, right? And my daughter does that now. She does it maybe 3 weeks out of the summer because there's about 10 kids that share the job. But it's not that they don't work at all. It just seems like we do give them way more than we got. I remember I wanted to have jeans without patches on the knees, right? I wanted to have jeans that weren't used before I wore them.
You didn't want tough skins.
I did not want tough skins, but that's what we got.
That's what with patches. You had the tough skins with the patches. That's how bad you were on the bicycle.
Yep, that's right. That's right. They don't have to worry about that, but we still make them work. We still make them work. They do their chores. They do, and they every second of all that work, they're complaining. They're like, none of my friends have to do this. I can't believe I have to do this. My son has actually turned a corner where he's like, you know what? I like going to work. And this summer, he's like, you want to go to this camp? He goes, no, I need to work this summer. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited about that. I'm very proud of him for that.
Then the absolute 16, and he's like, I want to work instead of go be with my friends at some camp. Yeah, that's Yeah, that's big.
That's
huge.
big.
That's good. That's good. Maybe you're doing something right. Maybe you're doing something right.
Something's right.
I think
wrong.
at the end of the day, we learn by watching, right? More than anything else. And so to your point, telling your kids your mistakes, this is where I messed up. There's a benefit to it. And I mean, I know I've talked ad nauseum to my kids about, mistakes here and there, but I was like, look, it's a mistake. You move on, right? But to your point, until they go to the ATM and it says, nope, no money. That's a pretty powerful moment in a person's life when it's like, oh my God, that's that pucker, right?
No.
Oh my God. And so it's hard when it's your kid to see that, right? But it's the best thing for them. Like, there are many reasons why I'm divorced, but one of them was my attitude towards my kids getting hurt. I'll give you a prime example. When my kids were real little, I was cooking dinner, had some pots on the stove and everything, and one of the handles was kicked out a little far, and my wife was like, hey, turn it to the back or whatever, and I say, all right, I was in the middle of something. I was watching the kid and she was fine. And she's like, are you gonna do it? And I was like, oh, she touches the pot. She'll only do it once,
It's the lesson my dad taught me too.
What's that?
It's a lesson my dad taught me too. Yeah. You might touch it, but you only do it one time.
Yeah. My dad was like, just don't get mangled, maimed, or dead. There was that limit, right? Like, I'm going to let my kid get hurt up to a certain limit.
We have to. We take too good care of them. Like, we have to let them make mistakes. We have to. That's how they learn lessons. Our best lessons are stuff that we do wrong.
200 years ago, average life expectancy was maybe 40 years of age. You had to get your shit together quick to live out there. Now it's like, well, this is going to sound really bad, but compared to what I grew up with, like the words or the phrase, like, well, how are you feeling today? That just doesn't happen. It's like, what did you do to survive or win? Like, what did you do in order to, so I'm hoping that me being a workaholic, I try to weave in the schedule with the kids. I'm hoping that my example, rubs off, and tell my oldest is 14. I tell her, look, in 2 years you can work. That means your makeup, your Spotify subscription, all that can be paid for out of your own pocket, and if I'm not paying for it, I have no say. The way I look at it, right? Except I do pay for the phone and I control the phone. Yeah. Anyway, that's a story for a different time, but
that's kryptonite for the kids. Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you this.
Yeah.
What does that mindful space look like when you personally are saying, maybe I'm doing too much for the kids? Like, for me, I always call it the fear motor. There's like there's a certain frequency in my chest that's my anxiety and my fear, right? And when I think about doing too much for my kids, there's a little bit from the chest, but I haven't been able to put my finger on the other emotion, right? So like when you're sitting back being mindful about your children, what is that space? Like, what's coming in for you? When you disidentify, pull away from it. Like, what would you tell yourself if you were counseling yourself on, I'm giving my kids too much?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. I think that I kind of just referenced it a little bit. The first thing I have to do is have to remember, their world is way different than my world was, right? So they're going to have unique circumstances and unique lessons that they get to learn. They are way smarter than I am in terms of their academic learning is far more advanced than mine was at their age. And so they're learning different things a lot more quickly, and their social world is completely different than mine. So, I mean, the internet didn't exist when I was a kid. Like, cell phones, forget it. Like, that wasn't even, no one even dreamt of that yet, unless you saw.
You could float a check in the good old days.
Right, exactly. There's none of that for them. So it's a totally different world, and there's lessons that they have to learn that I never even had to think about. So what I do is I go, okay, what are the things I really want to give them? What are the lessons I really want them to learn that are really important, that I think are timeless? And I think you've already touched on one. It's that work ethic. It's the idea that nothing is due you. You have whatever it is whatever your outcomes are. Sure, you start off with a situation. You have conditions to your life. You were raised in a certain location. You were raised around a certain kind of people. There's conditions, and those conditions include things like race and gender and all that stuff. Financial capacity, like you have conditions. But outside those conditions, everything else is choice. Everything else is a decision you make. A decision not to work means you don't get to do some stuff that you want to do. A decision to work means you can do some of those things that you want to do. A decision to, try this drug at this age leads to other potential problems. And so I try to just really make sure that they understand that life is a whole series of these trade-offs, and just to be aware of the trade-offs. And if they understand that, I have to trust that they're going to make the decisions that are right ones for them. And then I have to, and they're 13 and 16, so we're past the formative years. And now I'm trying to be a cheerleader for anything that they want to do, trying to be there to support, be there to, literally be the rah-rah guy and say, hey, that's fantastic. Have you, and if I ever say things like, hey, did you think about this instead? They get really upset by that. They hear it, but it's really deeply upsetting because I'm questioning their ability to make decisions, which is kind of my job a little bit, but I'm trying to do less of that. I'm trying to be more aware of the 2 or 3 very simple lessons I want them to learn, and just be rah-rah about all their things that they want to accomplish in their life, and just be really excited for them and really happy for them, and always be there, and ask the question, hey, how are you feeling? So, tell me what's going on in your world, and let me know if I can help at all.
When I'm going through the divorce, I saw a certain look in my youngest in her eyes. My ex was scolding her. For a little background. My youngest, it's her world. We're just allowed in it. Okay. She walks between the raindrops. Okay. She got a lot of her daddy in her. Okay. So anyway, she was getting chided or scolded or whatever. But I saw a moment where it was the weirdest thing. I could see my mother-in-law in my wife at the time. And I don't know what exactly my youngest was feeling, but the look in her eyes, I had the same one. And just grace of God or whatever, I was like, let's stop. And I am high strung. I have 2 emotions, happy and pissed off as hell. That's what I grew up with. Right. So those are my 2. That's what I oscillate between. And for some reason I stood in there, and, my wife, she was like, oh God, thank you. She could feel it coming on, and then immediately we got the little one and said, look, do you want to go see, go to a therapist? And so I researched and found a girl who just got out of college and was in her apprenticeship for counseling and therapy. And best decision me and the ex ever made for that kid. She can come back and talk to me now. If I get pissed, my wife would say, "Can we come back and talk about this later?" I would say whatever, just to get out of the situation. My little one will actually come back and talk about it now, which is new to me.
Huge,
but it's a great little space though. We can work there.
That's. And I think I am no child psychologist, but I think that's the transition from being the guide and always making comments and always making suggestions to just being really excited for them and really happy for them, and hey, good decision, and hey, good thinking, and here's options, here's ways to think about it. I think what that transition does is it enables them to come to you, because you're there to help them. Right. That's it. Remove judgment. That's the definition of mindfulness, is the non-judgmental awareness, right? And if you can just be calm and settled and let them live their lives. And they're driven by their amygdalas. Their frontal lobes aren't even developed yet. So their amygdalas are driving all their decisions, but you're just there. You're that calm center. You're the guy in the plane, right? You're the guy you look to the guy that's calm, that's figured this out, that's steady. And you need to be that guy for them. And that's who I try to be.
Absolutely. It also reminds me, I go to a lot of chemical plants and refineries, and there's always a safety orientation when you go in, and I say, but you have to go through it, right? It's mandatory. But I tell them, they go, did you go through the orientation? I said, look, I'm going to make this real simple. I'm going to wear my hard hat and keep all my PPE on, right? PPE on. I go, if you walk, I walk. If you run, I run with you. Okay. It's real simple. If there's any alarms or anything, I'm looking to you. And, maybe we go to a muster point and wait to get counted and cleared. Maybe we get the hell out of there, whatever the case may be. But yeah, the lack of judgment, because I think that is, are you familiar with Sherry Huber by chance? Anyway, screw it. I'll leave this in. This is the book I'm reading. Be the Person You Want to Find. She's Zen student and teacher over 30 years, founded all this stuff. I find my days are so much better if I just read 10 pages. And she's got 20 books. 10 pages of her book. It takes 5 minutes. It's written so a child can read it, right? It's no chapters, all stream of consciousness. Just, talks about identities, talks about conditioning, and so when I got in my mindful practice, it was what I hated the most was when it was cringing. That's to use my kids' word. It was cringe because I realized like, that's not me. That's my dad saying that, or that's my mom's fear. That's not me, you know? And here I am putting it right back down to the, you know, the next generation. So if nothing else, if I get nothing else from mindfulness and meditation, and I just went to my 3rd yoga class recently. So I'm all on board, you know, yeah, come talk to me in a year, see if I'm still doing it. But
yeah, exactly.
Right now I'm happy, but I do surrender yoga. So it's not very active. So it's just, you know, it doesn't hurt. It helps. Anyway, I just got sidetracked on all that. But anyway, you know, but if nothing else, if I can just have that space with the kids, you know, and I think it'll be all right. You know, as long as they can come back, I'm not judging them. I'm not, you know, I'm trying to remove that conditioning from me to them.
I find myself stating and to me, this is totally obvious. To them, it's not obvious at all. I find myself stating, you know, it's your decision. I'm just here to try to help. It looks like you needed help. If I say anything that's not, that you don't want to listen to, again, it's your decision. Like this is for you to decide and choose what you're going to do. I've just gone through a lot of stuff. And so I might have an idea that would be valuable. If you don't find value in it, that's okay. You're on your path. Like I'm here to support. I love you. I want the best for you. If you believe that, we're on a great pages together. This is perfect. But
you're not real. You're a hologram. No parent I know says that, man. That is awesome. That is awesome. I'm serious. I mean, okay, certainly where I grew up, that was not heard. Like you were definitely in the 21st century, right? But I think that's great, because at the end of the, you know, my dad used to tell me that, well, the world needs ditch diggers too. You know, so like, I'm going to try to help you, you know, become successful and do what you want to do. You know, and my parents, they pushed education coming out of the Depression, but I give them, they were, you know, my dad mostly would talk to me about it and say, look, go study what you want to study. Go find something that grabs you, that it's not work, right? You know, and so I did. I said, hey, came home, I was all excited. I said, I'm going to major in philosophy. Dad's like, well, you know, I was thinking more along the line, something you could make money with, you know, maybe accounting or mathematics, you know, biology, chemistry, you know. And then when I came home and said I was going to double major in German, I remember my mom was like, why? You know?
So I can read Kant in the original. Come on, of course.
Well, for me, it was actually a funny story, and I got to know we'll go way over time, but so I did a study abroad. My favorite in Germany, my favorite philosopher at the time was Friedrich Nietzsche, who went to the University of Bonn for a while. And my study abroad was in Bonn. So right in the Hofgarten, in the big garden in front of the university, and then there's the yellow house. And so, you know, as you do one day, trying to find a soccer game or hash, you know, depending on what day it was, I found 3 German philosophy students. And so sat down, like, what are you doing here? And came up and I said, well, I took German because I want to read Nietzsche in his native language, in the mother tongue. And I'll never forget, this guy pulls into his rucksack and he pulls out a Nietzsche book in English. He goes, read them in English. It's much easier.
That's awesome. That's a great story.
$4,000 for a study abroad. And the German students are reading them in English. Oh, I digress. Man.
Something's lost in that, though. Come on. That's not pure. Still, maybe they're right. I don't know.
Well, the problem with Nietzsche, he loved using ambiguous words, right? So if you looked at, say, the colloquial definition versus a more scientific or ancient definition, a lot of native speakers are still scratching. Like, how do we... And so when you put it into English, you know, like anything that's translated, you know, there's assumptions made by that translator or that interpreter, right? So long story short, I read about half of one of Nietzsche's books before I went back to the English, and just, you know, it was much easier. Yeah. So anyway, Jonathan, how can people get a hold of you, man? Thank you so much for this. It really means a lot to me. It's been very beneficial to me, and I know the audience will get something from it, but how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best place to go is to go to the website. It's mindful.money, and that's the sort of launch point for all your social media. There's a contact us page there. You can see the courses, you can see the wealth management services. It's all there. It all starts there. The place that if people want to connect, LinkedIn and Twitter are the two places I hang out the most.
Twitter, huh? Okay. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to see Twitter still hanging on with our generation. You know,
I stopped using it for about 4 years, and I just recently came back to it, which means for the vast majority of time it's been alive, I've not been a user, but I was a user early on, and I'm a user again. And it's a great way to just choose what you listen to, choose what you comment on. And it just have to be aware and choose wisely.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more that, don't be a troll, right? I guess is
yes.
Okay. So mindful.money. I like that. www.mindful.money, I assume.
Or just mindful.money. Either one will get you there.
Mindful.money. I love the money extension. That's cool. LinkedIn or Twitter. And and all this, of course, will be found in the show notes page over at privatelenderpodcast.com. And Jonathan, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun for me, which means I'm sure it's verbal diarrhea for the listener. But I really do appreciate you coming on and taking taking your approach to money, really, and discussing your kids and stuff. And this is very personal. We spoke for 3 minutes before we hit record on this thing, so this has been great. Thank you for being present and thank you for being mindful.
And thanks for not sticking to a list of questions and just having a conversation. It was great. I appreciate it, Keith.
Awesome. Take care, man. And there you have it, folks. I'd like to thank Jonathan DeYoe for stopping by today and discussing how he helps manage and invest his clients' money by utilizing mindfulness. Please do look at what Jonathan can offer you and reach out to him to learn more. In fact, you can find his contact details and everything else over at the show notes page at privatelenderpodcast.com, episode 134. All right, that's going to do it for episode 134. Speaking of episodes, I don't charge money for this show, but there is a cost to produce it, and I would be extremely grateful if you would help me get the word out and increase awareness by leaving me an honest rating and review over at Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or whatever platform you're using to hear my voice. But it would mean the world to me if you could take the time and leave an honest rating and review over at iTunes, as that'll generate more buzz for the show and it'll help you to erase a lot of negative karma. And you have negative karma. So don't forget to join the Private Lender Podcast Facebook group. Again, you can go to the show notes page for that link or just simply search Private Lender Podcast in Facebook groups. And go to privatelenderacademy.com to put the power of the banking industry into your investment account. Okay, that's going to do it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. And in addition to mindfulness and self-awareness, I wish you safe and successful private lending. I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Private Lender Podcast with your host, Keith Baker. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit privatelenderpodcast.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate